Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the American Masterminds podcast. I'm your host tonight, Topher Sheeler. I'm joined by my co-host, the one, the only Mr. Rob Adams.
What up, what up?
We've got the third part, the three-part series here. We're here with John and Nicci from Who Lives. This is the crescendo. This is the big one. Rob, why don't you tell us, this is heavy. Tell us what's going on.
Hang on tight, guys, because we're going to talk about some really very difficult conversations. But the point of all of this is that one or two people can make a mighty change, a difference. And it takes some willingness and it takes someone to be unreasonable and get to work. Please stay tuned. This is an amazing story.
This is not one that you want to miss. Sit down. This is going to be a little more serious. We're talking about some pretty heavy topics. You know the drill. Let's grab a quick word from the sponsor and we'll jump right in.
Welcome to the American Masterminds podcast.
Today's episode is brought to you by Blue Logic.
What if the water your kids drink every day wasn't as clean as you think? Invisible contaminants, lead, arsenic, PFAS can slip through ordinary filters. With Blue Logic's whole home purification, you remove up to 99.8% of what shouldn't be there. Give your family water that's as pure as your love for them. Call now or visit BlueLogicWater.com to schedule your free in-home water test. Because what touches your family every day should never be left to chance. Blue Logic Water, pure protection for the ones you love most.
We're getting started here now. I just want you guys to know, listeners, that this is episode number 3 of a couple of my favorite people in the whole wide world, the founders and the continuing supporters of Who Lives. Now, Who Lives is an acronym for water, health, and opportunity. We've talked about water. We've talked about opportunity. Now we're kind of jumping into a health space, and that's what we're going to talk about today. And this subject matter is heavy stuff, listeners. I want you to know if you are easily emotional, this is not your episode, because we're going to talk about some hard-hitting stories, but it's necessary that we have this conversation because I had no idea. I had no idea that this was happening in the world. And when I heard some of these stories, I was blown away. And I'm going to tell you that I am the father of 4 beautiful girls. I have 4 daughters who I'd take a bullet for right now. I love those girls. Mm-hmm. More than there are words to express. And so, already.
Yep. We haven't even started yet.
Haven't even started. Just thinking about my girls and if they were in this place, how it would affect me as a father. And we're just going to jump right in. And so what we're going to talk about today is called FGM, which is female genital mutilation, which is a thing. It's a thing that's happening in the world. And so I just want to kind of do first an overview, and then I want to talk about the uncovering the big lie. And we're going to have an attachment on this. And we're going to talk about a book called The Value of a Daughter. And we're going to talk about where we can get information on this. And then how can we best support your organization in remediating this, getting this out of the world. And so let's just start with the beginning of the story. Let's start there. And I don't want to, I don't know if I fully understand, John, the beginning of the story, but how did we discover that this was happening?
So during COVID, my wife and I weren't able to travel, chose not to travel. And we had one of our water drilling companies go and they were drilling for a rescue center. And most of the jobs that go through our organization, they'll run it by me just to make sure I'm okay with it. And so I okayed it. But then it was like 20 days later, I'm thinking, well, what kind of a rescue center is it?
Yeah.
I've been up in that area before.
We're talking pets? What are we talking about?
I honestly thought it was for animals, but in this area, I can even imagine there being an animal rescue center. So I asked our drill team what kind of a rescue center it was, and I found out that it was mainly for girls who were escaping the female genital mutilation, the FGM, they call their culture of literally cutting the girl in her private areas, removing the parts of her body with a dirty razor, no anesthesia, in the middle, on the ground, and it's And when I heard about this and it was happening right then and there, it just struck me. I'm the same way. I have 3 daughters, and just the idea, more than anything, just envisioning the pain of being cut in that area with a dirty razor, along with 20 or 30 other girls.
Publicly.
It's done privately. It's the cutter, and then typically 2 or 3 helpers to hold the girls down because they're screaming and trying to get trying to kick, because the pain is just it's just unbelievable. We've had neighbors talk about the screams that they hear from over the hill, not knowing where the screams were coming from or why.
Why would they do this? Like, what in the world would possess somebody to think this is a good idea?
Well, it comes down to, I think, what a lot of awful things in this world. It comes down to power, and it comes down to money. And really the only explanation is power and money, because there's obviously no medical benefit. But if you can remove the sensation of the girls when they become wives, the false narrative that the men would talk about is that they're less likely to cheat if there's no enjoyment
of sex.
And so they remove those parts, and again, they call it a tradition, which is one of the first biggest lies. And as one thing we discovered is that this thing was not originated. The area that we're working in, there's about 1.5 million people that are part of this tribe called Kuria, and again, to go in there and tell them, well, not only is this not a Kurian tradition, it's not even a Kenyan tradition or a Tanzanian tradition, and it's not even an African tradition. The other thing was quote unquote invented or practiced, hundreds of years before Christ, as a way to, again, in the Middle East, to either punish or control their women. And so, but somehow it found its way down through either the trade routes or something, and some leader of some village said, "Oh, that'd be a great idea. My wife's, she's acting up. Maybe I'm going to go do this and call it a tradition." And if you call it a tradition or a custom, then people are much less likely to
question it.
Yeah. And so that has gone on for hundreds of years. And now that we have exposed that it's not a tradition and it's not a custom, but it's really flanked in these horrific ideas of control, power, and money. We're starting. Well, not starting. We've made a ton of headway in turning the minds of the people into, maybe this isn't a great idea. Maybe we should try something else.
So we're talking about a generational tradition that's been handed down. Like, how long would you say that the Tanzanians and the Kenyans have had this then in their culture? Yeah.
So it's kind of funny because it's, when you try to narrow that down, you have a lot of different answers. Some people say it's been hundreds of years. Some people say, this really only started 60, 70, 80 years ago. But in practical terms, in the areas that we're working, when we first, came upon this in this area, about 98% of the girls were being cut, and their mothers had been cut, and their grandmothers had been cut, and all their aunties and their cousins. And so, what was interesting is that by removing this part of their body, no one really understood what they were giving up, because it all happens at age 9 to 15, and most of these girls, many of these girls, haven't had any experience, with that, and so it just became like something you did.
Was there, and I can see this. I think of traditions where they're not good traditions. They're actually terrible traditions, hazing traditions, and other things that I've experienced in my life. And because grandma and mom had, well, then you are. And then they are, the mom and the grandma then are the enforcers of it, because it happened to me. That's what we do when in this period of your life. Is that right? And they become the biggest enforcers because they suffered.
It is. And before we judge them too harshly, because it's just this horrible, horrible tradition that's so painful, I've thought of it, I have 3 girls, but I have 3 boys. We have 6 kids. And when our boys were born, we had them circumcised. We didn't even think about it. We didn't even talk about it as a couple. It was just something that we did in the hospital, and they clip, and it was done. And so in many cases, that's the mentality of a lot of the people, is like, well, we just do it.
Interesting perspective, yes.
Yeah.
It's who we are.
It's who we are. Yeah, just part of what we do.
It would be unusual not to.
Yeah. Now, the difference obviously is in the horror that procedure is, and how dirty the circumstances are. And it also leads to another crime, which is child marriages. And so there's another tradition and we fight it simultaneously, but not every time, but a lot of times when these girls get cut, it's in preparation to sell them to a much older man as a bride. And so
wait a second.
Yeah.
Sell them?
Sell them.
So a man can come in and purchase this 11-year-old,
it's a bride price.
Yeah, it's a dowry.
A dowry.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, 10 cows for your.
Okay.
Yeah.
So as soon
Mahana,
as they start showing signs of puberty, as young as 8, 9, then they will get the cut. And then they will be sold sometimes as
promised
4th wife, to a 70-plus-year-old. I mean, I've interviewed so many girls, and they're telling me the same stories.
Okay.
Their childhood is over. As soon as the cut happens, the childhood is over. If they can make it to 8th grade, that's lucky. But more than likely, they have to drop out of school and become a slave, literally.
Which is part of the life.
I shake my head, and I know this is terrible. This sounds terrible, but it's not my tradition. I could tell you traditions in my family that you'd be like, that's a little ridiculous that your family gets together and does these things.
That's why the cops are always there on Thanksgiving.
That's exactly right. 4th of July. Thank you.
Sorry. My apologies.
But I'm not trying to cast a light on it, but when I think about that, I think back on traditions that my ancestors did and different things, and it's outside my scope of imagining, but this is culturally accepted. It's not like this is an unusual practice. This is you said 98%.
98%.
Okay.
Yeah.
And because it's so secretive, the girls don't know what's coming. They're forbidden to talk about it, and they're forbidden to share their experience afterward. They're there in 4th grade, as John likes to say, one day, and the next day they're not.
And that's it.
And the girls who get cut, again, culturally, are forbidden to tell the girls the pain and the anguish and
that haven't been cut.
That haven't been cut.
Oh my gosh, it just gets my blood boiling thinking about this. And then the child marriage, which also traditionally, culturally speaking, you can go back in the Americas, and it wasn't uncommon for young girls to be married to older men. And so this is just, and I'm not saying just, I don't want to diminish it, but this is not outside the scope of tradition.
Yeah. I mean, we've seen it throughout the ages. Now, typically, you mentioned the Americas, it was, girls got married at 13, 14, but they get married to 17, 18, 19, or maybe 20-year-olds. They weren't getting married to 60-year-olds. And that's, kind of this tradition is that they're taking these child brides on, as a bride in their 50s and 60s. And that's really where it gets,
out of control. And let's just go back to the cuts happened now. What then happens to them? Are they kept separately? Do they have to get right back into life? Like, is there a recovery period? Like, this sounds to me like it's an initiatory process.
Yeah.
What's the tradition around this?
So it's kind of funny because there's a paragraph in there that I talk about where why some girls voluntarily go to the cut. And we have one story that still just kills me today, of a girl who was refusing to get cut, and she was so vibrant and so alive and so friendly, and she was great friends with our group, with the police officers. And it was one day she literally saw a pack of her friends walking to the cut, and she said, well, I think I'm going to join them. And because part of the allure is after you get cut, you get like 30 days without any chores. You get a mattress in many cases, a new mat. For the first time, they'd be able to sleep on a mattress. Up until the point that they get cut, they typically are sleeping on on the ground, or on an animal skin on top of the ground. So now they might get a small mattress. And then once they cut these girls, they will almost always parade them, like literally down the public roads. And the custom is you go and you put money, you pin a little bit of money, on their dress or whatever. And so they get a little walking cash, and they get celebrated. And so
significance.
Yeah. When you're 9 and you see that, like all my friends are going, again, they have no concept at that point of what they're giving up or what they're getting themselves into. And so, that's been a big part. The education part has been a big part of what we've had to do, but we've had to really start way before then to start fighting this thing, because we're talking about taking a tradition that's been around for 100 or maybe several hundred years, and where we don't know of any areas that have had the success that we've had in ending this tradition. But it hasn't all come at once. I mean, it's been point upon point upon point.
Oh, sure. Overnight success with years of work.
Yeah, exactly.
So let's talk about that really quickly. We've discovered the problem.
Yeah.
Let's before we start talking about the process or what we're doing to get rid of the problem, should we talk about these case studies of the girls that had happened? Is this a good time?
I would think so.
Yeah, let's talk about,
because I want this to be like a clean line of discovery.
Absolutely.
Examples. Now what are we doing?
Absolutely. So we have lots and lots of stories, lots of pictures of these girls. And the first one I'd like to tell you is Damaris. So she was born as a twin. She has a twin brother. And when you're born as a twin, you're believed to have special powers. So right away, she and her brother were designated for great things. She was designated to be the next cutter. And so at 9 years of age, they took her in, held down by women that she knew, and was cut through FGM. And she didn't understand why. She just cried because she hadn't done anything wrong. Why was this happening to her? And she was hoping that life would just go back to normal after that. But it wasn't to be. They were training her to be the next cutter. And so she had to quietly slip away in the night and run away. And she ran away to one of our rescue centers. We were able to take her in and get her some help and some healing. And unfortunately, she's in such a position she cannot be returned to her family. So for most of these girls, we always return them to their family. But Damaris could not be returned. And so, of course, she wonders about her family. She knows that her brother is now training to become the next village elder. Yeah.
Wow.
And she can't go back at all. But she was cut pretty brutally. She had to have multiple trips to the hospital, and it took her a while to be able to join the other girls and go back to school. So I have her words, and I've seen her picture. She's darling, and she's doing really well in our rescue center. She's getting an education. She wants to be a nurse so she can help and heal and she's an anti-FGM advocate. The other story I want to tell you that I brought is...
You can share her words. Like, we have the bandwidth. Like if you want to.
Her words?
Oh, sure. And
okay.
It seems like the story's well told, but if there's something in this story that we need to hear, let's hear it.
Yeah. She said, when they finally told me to undergo the cut, I was terrified. I remember trying to resist, crying and begging them to stop, but no one listened to me. I was held down by women I knew. Women who said this was for my own good, that it would make me a real woman. But all I felt was fear. I did not understand why something so painful had happened to me when I had done nothing wrong. I thought the worst was over. I thought I could somehow go back to my normal life, back to school, back to being myself. But it was not. They'd chosen me to carry on the practice, she said. And she had to quietly slip out at night and leave home for good. And that was in 2022, 2021. And so now we're in 2026. She's been with us.
Wow.
All that time.
And the one thing I hadn't considered is that because it is not a process, it's a random happening. There's no consistent application of the tool. And so she was injured more severely.
She's cut. Yes. Girls often lose their life over this.
I was going to ask.
There's a major
plus infections.
artery down there. If you cut that too deep, you will bleed out and die. And that's in itself considered a very bad thing. And usually the cut ends right there. Because, man,
you hit that artery.
Evil powers are present. And if someone dies during a cut, they'll stop it. Stop the rest of it. But if you can imagine, if you're sewed up tight and you're trying to give birth to a baby, or even if you're trying to pee, you just have this tiny, tiny hole you're trying to trickle it out of. Your monthly cycle, all of that is just excruciatingly painful.
Because it's permanently disfigured.
It is. It's not under anesthesia in a sterile environment. It's not. We've seen the tools. We've seen
and just to add,
and it's pretty graphic.
It is. And just to add to what Nicci just said was the reason they end the cut isn't because they have feelings for this girl, but they think that there's been like an evil spirit. And they don't return that body to the parents. Or matter of fact, it's even culturally outlawed to even return the daughter to the village. So they'll quite literally dump that body in the forest and let the forest animals devour the body.
So now
this is like the witchcraft side of things.
Cut, they'll dispose of the body in the woods for the wild animals to eat.
And then the family, oh my gosh, can you imagine being like not having your daughter returned?
You can't bury her.
There's no closure.
There's no closure. Yeah.
That makes my heart ache.
Yeah.
It's terrible.
I'll tell you one more story and then we'll move on to something a little happier at the end of it. So Yulita, so she also, so both these girls have 7 children in their family being raised by single mothers. And Yulita's mother works in the coal mines and actually in the gold mines, which is a hot, labor-intensive job for little pay. So because each of these girls live in single-parent families, they didn't have a father or a male to stand up for them. And actually, Yulita decided after her older sisters were cut, she didn't want to be cut. And her mom supported her, but her older brothers disagreed. And so she had to leave. She had to escape. And so she did. She went off and she went to high school, but she missed her family like crazy. She stayed away for a year. She came back during Christmas time. Her brother cornered her and came back drunk. She locked herself in her bedroom, came back drunk with petrol, with fuel. He was going to burn the house down with her in it. So she freaked out and started screaming and crying, and the police were called and their brother was arrested. And so that right there, because this is an illegal practice, we forgot to say that, but people get arrested for this. It's illegal. Well, she went back to school again. She's living with an aunt and things were going well, but she still missed her family too much. So again, she tried to come home during the holidays. And this time, because the oldest brother was imprisoned, the next oldest brother confronted her and about this shame that she had brought on the family and about, it was heavy. It's a heavy thing to bear. You're ridiculed. You live with these people in this compound. And so this just breaks my heart. So it was January and her brother grabbed a machete, threatened to kill her if she continued to bring shame to the family. And when he came back drunk, that was the older brother. So the next brother, he came back with the villagers actually And I'm just going to read it. They escorted me into a nearby forest, singing and chanting as if it was a celebration. I was bleeding, being beaten, insulted, surrounded by people I had grown up with. Not one person stepped in to help me, not one. When we reached the forest, they forced me down. My hands were held. My legs were spread apart. I have never felt so helpless in my life. I screamed until my voice broke. No one listened. Then I felt it, a sharp, unbearable pain that shot through my entire body. Felt like it started from my head and tore through me. I don't remember thinking. I remember running back to my house, weak, bleeding, humiliated. People followed behind me, laughing and mocking. By the time I reached the house, I had no strength. I was bleeding heavily. I locked myself inside. Outside, I heard someone say the police had been called. The crowd scattered. As I was inside, I was fading. The police arrived just in time. They rescued me and took me to the hospital. I was in so much pain, I could barely stay conscious, but I survived.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So this girl, Yulita, she's amazing though, and she is in school. She is doing great. She had to cut herself off from everyone in her family because actually that older brother, after he was released from prison, he died, and they blame her
Oh my God.
for it. So except for her mother, she has no contact with her family at all. But she is getting a diploma right now and will probably be at her graduation.
On the timeline, we might be jumping around a little bit, but I really want to touch on something that Nicci had mentioned in those stories, and that is that the police came. Now, prior to us showing up in this area, the police never would go on what we call an FGM case or any violence against women. And one of the first things I did was talk with the police as I'm trying to figure out why these things exist and how come it hasn't stopped. Just my natural curiosity of wanting to end this thing. I talked to the police and I asked them, why is it that you're not arresting these girls and or these perpetrators, the women who are cutting the girls and the family members? And they explained that as a little, police unit, that they have a couple cars, but they're only allotted so much fuel for their cars. And so it was about, they can drive about 30 kilometers a day, which means they can, 15 kilometers out, 15 kilometers back, then they had to park the car. Some had, a little bit longer, you go 60 kilometers, 30 kilometers out, 30 kilometers back, but then you had to park the car. So when one of these, unlawful events would happen, number one, they didn't have the fuel to go out and enforce the law. That was the number one reason for not enforcing the law, was they didn't have the fuel. Because even if you went out and arrested the person, you brought them back to jail, there
are other laws that can't be enforced now because they're done on their allotment.
Well, and now the judicial system is very organized. It's not a banana republic. It's very organized. And so you have to have evidence. You have to have, people that testify. So when the trial came around, then they'd have to go and get the girl again from out of her community, which is out of their, their rations for their fuel, and then hope that this girl would actually testify face to face against their perpetrator, whether it's an uncle or a brother or a family member or an elder.
Yeah.
And at 9, 10, 11, 12 years old, not change their testimony. So the reason they weren't enforcing it was for those reasons, that they could never get convictions. And so that's where.
So now they're driving on a long shot. They don't even know if the young girl would have a relevant testimony.
Yeah, especially 2 or 3 months later.
Yeah.
when they came to trial.
Wow.
And so that was one of the first things that I did, was figure out, okay, how can we empower the police to do their jobs? So one of the first things we did was have an agreement with all the police stations that if they were going on an FGM case or a violence against women case, that we would pay their fuel. And we put some safeguards in there. Again, they're very organized. They have to write police reports. And so they would either have to show the judicial system or the child support system that they went on those things. So we knew that they were actually going on cases and not just filling up their tanks.
And driving around.
And it's been amazing, number one, how successful that program has been. And number two, how they have not taken advantage of that program at all.
Wow.
Yeah. And so that's the beginning. So now, for the first time ever,
Enforceable
laws. Now, just prior to that, we had another idea that came to me, and it was on I was literally visiting a police station with a friend. My friend had an appointment there, and I was just there as a friend. And while they were there talking, my friend to the chief of police in that area, a young woman came into the front door, and I can see from where I was sitting, I can see this taking place. Now, I didn't understand the language. They're speaking a local dialect, but this young girl, I figured she was 15 or 16, came in, and she's just frantic talking to one of the police officers behind the desk, happened to be a female, and you could tell she was just panicked. And the police officer behind the desk, I could just tell she's like, "I'm sorry, I can't do anything." I just her hand motions and everything were such that I knew that the girl was asking for help, but there was nothing that the girl could do. And so our meeting got over, and I kind of walked out and I started talking to the police officer behind the desk. She had great English, and I says, "What was going on with that girl that came in?" And it was a similar situation, but in the sense that the girl had been raped by an uncle, and she escaped and running away. But now her family was chasing her, and she knew that they were going to kill her if they were caught her. And I asked, I said, "Well, how come you couldn't protect her?" He said, "Well, the only thing we have at this point, it's 6, 7 o'clock in the evening. The child social welfare system is closed down for the day, and the only place she could put them is in what they call the general population, Gen Pop, right? Well, they're all drunk men, and they're not going to take a 13-year-old, 15-year-old girl and put her in there." But she said, "Just come back tomorrow, and we'll bring you over to social services." And I just asked her, I said, "Well, what would have solved that problem? How could you have helped her?" And it was amazing. Her answer was, "Well, if we had a bed for her to stay in, then she could have stayed there." I said, "Well, where would you put that bed?" And we walked out, and she showed me like an evidence room where it was just basically a round steel building with a roof on it where they would take in evidence and take some testimony. And she said, "Yeah, we just put it right in here." And I just told her, "You'll have," and we decided we'll put a bunk bed. So we had 2 beds. I said, "You'll have a bunk bed by
And that's
tomorrow."
the beautiful thing. You walk right outside the police station, bunk beds on the street for sale.
Yeah.
Instantaneous. It really
literally we
is.
drove down.
Mattresses.
Yeah, we drove down
Everything.
not even a quarter mile, saw bunk beds being sold on the side
They
of the
sell
road.
everything. Caskets.
Yeah.
No way.
You can find anything
Yeah.
on a street corner.
And so we talked to the person literally who was building them right there, steel,
Yeah.
and they weld them all up. I says, "Hey, we want to buy a bunk bed. Can you deliver it over to the police station tomorrow?" He said he could ask us, "Here's a little bit extra money. I want you to buy some blankets and some mattresses." And
So
and it
every police station got multiple bunk beds. Every police station in the district, because John just asked. He asked, "What do we need to do to
Simple
make these
solution.
girls safe?"
Yeah. And it's a simple solution.
Yeah.
Oh, if we had a place to keep them, this is what we do.
yeah.
Amazing.
Well, the amazing came the next day when this police officer called me, and she says, the gal didn't return the next day. She's not sure what happened. But that afternoon, they had a very, very similar, and that very night, they had their first person stay in those bunk beds and was safe. And then the situation was taken care of the next day.
Huh.
And then, like Nicci says, that led to us literally putting bunk beds in every police station in this entire area. We're talking hundreds, and but that has saved thousands of lives over the last 5+ years when we started this. But again, simple, right?
Yeah.
Simple.
Well, unless you don't think of it.
You're right.
You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
You're the first person to be like, "Hey, well, I've got an
Yeah.
idea. Why don't we just
do that?
Yeah. I
Yeah.
love that. So what a great solution.
And that's where a lot of this has come. Right now we're celebrating the fact that we've done a tremendous job and virtually have, ended this practice in this area of 1.5 million people. It's never going to be 100%, right? There's always going to be outliers, but to go from 98% of the girls being cut down to 3, 4, 2% being cut is amazing. But you don't have the plan. You don't write out the plan to start with. You just write out idea by idea by idea as they come to you.
Line upon line.
Line upon line.
Yeah. So John asked. We provided fuel. We got some bunk beds for them. The next step was for the girls. They were terrified to testify face to face for their accuser.
How would you overcome that?
We built a children's courthouse.
Funny you should ask.
I know.
It's almost like we're having a podcast.
I know. So cool.
So tell me about the children's courthouse. What does that mean?
It's a building that is separate from the main courthouse. So it's dedicated just for the children. So as such, it's painted in bright colors. It has beautiful Disney characters all around it.
Disney-like characters.
Disney-like characters. It has a swing sets and
no alignment
slides, and it's really a comfortable, child-friendly place. And the girls go in this children's courthouse. They sit behind a partition, a mirrored partition, and have a video feed with the judge.
In the other building.
Yeah, so they can testify
building.
without their perpetrator staring right at them 3 feet away.
Yeah.
They don't. So on the other side of the mirror is the prosecutor asking questions. But again, she can see the prosecutor. The prosecutor can't, see in. And so
they're completely protected.
And so then they're more apt to just tell the story.
Yes.
I mean, so there's the question then would be like, don't they know like that they're talking about these people who are in their tribe, in their community? They're not dumb to what's happening, but they're more comfortable is what you're saying.
Well, it's just, it removes the intimidation. 100% removes the intimidation. So
they speak more clearly. Now that I can speak more clearly, then if a conviction's made, is it an immediate conviction? Then these girls are safe. Do you get what I mean? Like, because they're speaking against accusers they're giving
5 to 15 years and sometimes more for the role of the cutter or the abuser
or the holder downer.
They're giving a lot of jail time.
So now word's getting out. This only needs to happen a couple times for people to be like, wait, whoa, like if this happens, we could be held
we had over 160 arrests in the first 2 years.
What?
Which sent shockwaves through the community.
So it wasn't Kenya per se they had the laws in place to enact. That wasn't part, because that would be huge. That'd be so hard to change that.
Yeah.
All you needed to do was create an enforceable law that they could feel comfortable doing or confessing.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so that really was the focus was, how do, and again, it's step by step, right? And so, we realized the problem. Okay, how do you fix the problem? How do you, with the police, with the social workers? Nicci mentioned that we typically try to return the children to their families. Well, the way we do that, like the first year, we were like, okay, how do we do this? So, and this credit goes back to Jimmy. He's an African from Kenya, a young boy, 30. But man, he's the tip of our spear down there. And he says, well, let's do a fair. And I kind of poo-pooed it at the beginning, but okay, Jimmy, let's run this thing. So literally he gathered all the parents of the girls that we had at our rescues. So we're talking, a couple thousand. And what we would do is that we had a police officer, somebody from the judicial system, somebody from the social system, and somebody from the educational system. So we had 4 people, and 3 of the 4 would interview each set of parents. And basically they would say, especially with the police there, we know who you are, we know where you live. If you cut your daughters, we're coming after you. And
be warned.
Be warned, yeah. And if the parents understood and they said, we agree, we're not going to cut our daughters. We understand that, this is not something, it's against the law, blah, blah, blah. Then they would return that daughter to the parents. Now, one thing that the school, the schools in this area and in a lot of parts of Kenya, if you're pregnant, you can't go to school. And so they check them at the beginning of each semester to make sure they're not pregnant. And it's during that check that they can also see if they've been cut. And so if they had been cut and they're part of this program, we would go out and arrest those perpetrators. And so again, the idea was not to separate families. The idea was not to get rid of the parents or to make a permanent residence for these girls. The idea was, let's just end this practice and find the most practical way of ending the practice.
Amazing. I love the natural evolution of the discovery and then and where it's going. Now, you told me a story about, and I don't want to jump ahead of the timeline, but you were going to talk to chiefs of tribes. Yeah. Can we talk about that story? Because it's one of my favorite of the John stories.
So there's basically two groups that are pushing the FGM. One is the elders and the cutters, because they get paid to do that and they maintain control. And the others, as was mentioned earlier, is like the families, the mamas and the grandmothers and such. So we were going at this point, I was actually invited to speak to a group of elders. And I'm thinking, you know what, and the invitation was brought to me by one of the leaders of one of our rescue homes. And she says, yeah, the elders want to talk to you. And I'm like, no, they know my position. It's good enough. I've been loud and clear at all these different rallies. And so I don't want to go and talk to them. But she kept on insisting, no, they really want to talk to you. And I said, well, where do they want to meet? Well, where they wanted to meet was literally 45 minutes down a dirt road. And I'm thinking, you know what? They're never going to find the body.
This is their turf. Yeah.
This is, and I didn't know if it was an ambush or not. You don't know, because again, we're talking about a cultural, in their minds, that we're ending this cultural,
Had arrests been made at this time? Like
at this time, there had not been. There had this. So this predates the arrest just by months.
Okay.
And so I go out and I felt calm. Okay, I'm going to go talk to him. And so I'll mention real quickly too is that there's in the area that we work, there's Courier West and Courier East. The Courier West, they were much more. They weren't as fanatic as Courier East. Okay, so I'm going to an area where they're not as fanatic. Now they're still cutting all their girls, but they're not as fanatic. So
a little more conservative.
Yeah, a little bit. And so we go out, and on the road out, I'm thinking, well, what am I going to tell these guys? And I came up with a story that was basically a lie. But I told this to a friend. He says, it's not a lie, it's a parable. I felt much better about telling a parable than a lie. But here's how it went. So I went to the elders, and I told them that I had just been in Uganda, and it was a similar group. And that let me back up a little bit. I started out by agreeing with them, saying, isn't culture the number one thing about a community? And all the elders in this area, they carry a staff. And when they agree with you, they kind of pound their staff. And so I asked the group of elders, how important is tradition? Boom, boom, boom. And how about culture? Who are we without culture? And they boom, boom, boom. And so I said, I want to tell you about a real African culture that we all need to be following. And that is that an elder in ancient Africa, they would remove their left eye so that their right eye would stay focused on their community. And they were intrigued, and they kind of pounded their staffs like half. And so then that's when I told them, I was just in Uganda, and we talked about this tradition. We talked about the culture of the elders removing their left eye. And of the 30 elders that were there, we had 8 that came forward and volunteered to remove their left eye. And I'm telling the story, and you can kind of see, now, again, I have an interpreter as I'm talking who's relaying this message.
So you're seeing it hit.
So I'm waiting just a few seconds, and you can kind of tell, like, is that what he just said? And so, anyways, I tell a story, and I kind of use the rivalry between sports and countries. Like, I know you Kenyans are a lot better than the Ugandans, so I'm sure that if they had 8 volunteers, I'm sure we can get 12 or 15 volunteers from you guys. So who's going to volunteer? And I just said it was like enthusiasm, excitement, and it was like dead silence. No one's,
You mean the Ugandans are braver, more committed?
Ugandans are braver than the Kenyans. I can't believe this. And so I just left it quiet. And it felt like, 12 minutes. I'm sure it was probably maybe 90 seconds. And after that very uncomfortable pause where I just left it asking for volunteers to follow this ancient African tradition, and no one was volunteering, even though the Ugandans had, I asked the question, well, wouldn't you agree that some tradition, some culture is better off left in the past? And of course, boom, 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 boom. They all
I would
started
keep
in
my
this.
eye.
Yeah. And then I just simply stated after that, well, FGM should be one of those traditions that we leave in the past. And I just ended it right there.
Drop the mic.
Just dropped the mic. And so the head of all the elders, there's always a leader. He was an older, basically, he says, give us a few minutes. So me and my interpreter, we walked away, and they kind of gathered and talked and they called us back after a pretty short time. I mean, it was probably not even 10 minutes. And the lead elder, the head elder says, from this point forward, we're going to denounce FGM in all of our villages.
That's a powerful parable.
And I turned to my interpreter, like, did you just say what I think you said?
One more time, leave me.
Yeah. And then I did everything in my power, thinking of, bright sunny beaches, not to cry, because, you don't want to show that emotion at that particular time. You want to be, but that was the starting point of getting the elders. Now there's about 140 elders in Kenya and another 120 in Tanzania. So this was the very beginning of getting that segment on our side.
Shifting perspectives.
The perspective.
Wow.
Yeah. And then we talked about what's going to happen is that you're going to share this with the other elders, and they're not going to believe you. They're going to mock you. You need to be able to tell the story to them and tell them that this is a tradition that we need to leave into the past. And I said, feel free to tell the story about popping out your left eye. And so that was a big moment.
That is huge. But what's more, it's not their tradition. Like, that's the other part of the story, right?
Now, at this point, I haven't told them that. I hadn't thought of that at this point.
Yeah.
So at this point, it's still getting them to change their tradition, because it hadn't dawned on me. That came about another year later during another speech. And if you don't mind, I'm going to jump ahead and tell you where I told that exact story to another group of elders and what happened. You got a minute for that?
That's why we're here.
All right. We're jumping forward.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is my favorite part of the story.
Yeah. We're jumping forward about 2 years. And now I'm in East Korea, where they're very fanatical and they're tough. And
this is who we are. They're really bought into their identity.
They bought into it, and there's not a lot of leeway. But again, I was invited to talk with this group. We had a police escort, and at the very last minute, I decided to cancel the escort. I just felt like it was okay, and so I showed up and said a few words and basically repeated that story. Now, nobody in this group of elders was in the original group of elders, so this is a brand new story for them. And so I told the story about the Ugandans and them and people coming forth and removing their left eye. And so I asked if there's for the volunteers, and no one volunteered except for one.
Uh-oh.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll play this game. I got you. So a guy volunteered, and I said, great. I says, so come up. I says, we just can't do this on the floor. We need, some sort of a carpet or something. So somebody ran and 5 minutes later came in and laid down this beautiful, carpet on the ground. And I'm saying, okay, are you ready for this? He said, yeah, I'm ready for this. And I said, well, I can't do it because I'm not an elder. So we need, one of you guys to do it, one of the elders. And about 7 people raised their hands like, I'll cut out his eye.
I never liked that guy.
Yeah, I never. And so he called the guy up. He's kneeling down. We had a guy with a short blade knife, and we're ready to do the ceremony. And I was like, well, they punked me. They
have called my bet.
They called my bluff. And so but it was right then where I said, well, I want you to understand that this is just something for you to think about, and that is, that this is a horrible tradition, and nobody else was willing to do it except for this one person. And kudos for him for being, so strong and willing to take this injury, for the rest of you. And then sheepishly, a guy in the back raised his hand and says, you realize he's blind in his left eye, right?
Oh, jeez.
He's not losing anything, this guy.
I had no idea. And he gets up, and then you look at him and you see that his life is all cloudy, and he'd been blind in his left eye his whole life, but for years and years. But fortunately, it had the same effect. Fortunately, and basically part of the speech was, if you're not willing to injure yourself for a tradition, for your people, then what right do you have to injure this little girl and deform her and put her through that pain if you're not willing to do the same? You have no moral high ground here. And that talk really made a difference. And again, a very, very similar reaction. And I invited them to create arguments that we could talk about, and no one was able to come up with a rebuttal. And so
I love the script practice idea. I wonder where that came from. That's an interesting thing. Like, let me hear your best objections. Let's go.
Yeah, because you're going to hear them from somebody else. So what are they going to tell you?
Yeah.
And so anyways, the one thing, because it's one thing to get promises from somebody and then hope that they follow through, but we needed something more than that. And so we went to basically, the top guy and two of his, the top 3 elders that were there. And we asked them if they would do a radio announcement and, basically, supporting the end of FGM. And they said, you know what, we're going to basically the international convention for FGM down in Tanzania. And so this was like on a Tuesday, and they were going to go down on, it was over the weekend, like a Friday, Saturday, and then they come home Sunday. So they wanted to give the idea to the whole general board where all the leaders from both Kenya and Tanzania were at. And then they would come back on Sunday, ended up being Monday, that they would then do their radio announcement. We do a commercial and have their word on tape. So you can imagine how our hearts were beating double, that Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. They called us back, and they were a little bit elusive, but it was more their personality. They said, well, okay, we'll see you on Monday. And it's like, oh, all right, in my mind, I think I was protecting myself against disappointment. So I'm saying, well, it's maybe a 50-50. They showed up. Well, I'll be darned. They showed up, and they gave their testimony, and they basically said, we're ending this practice. Wow. And not only that, they had the support of the Tanzanian elders as well. And so again, just a huge, huge success. And again, that has come, just in the last in the last 12 months. Wow. So yeah, that was big.
I love the story on so many levels. Yeah. That's so cool. Yeah. And I know you're not alone, John. I know that you're not alone, Nicci, that there's Jimmy in country and all of these people that are getting in alignment, and the radio stations and now the police officers. And here we go. There's this cascading effect of community saying, no more. This is not okay. I don't want this to happen to my little girl. I don't want it to happen to anybody ever again. But it's not just a cultural thing now. It's a generational thing. It's of this thing. And the reason that I'm bringing in, putting this much energy or these many words towards this is the resolver idea of a few people saying, not anymore. This is not okay.
Yeah.
That's how the world changes. The reason that I want to do this story, and I've wanted to do it for so long, is because the rub is that one of us, when we put our foot down, we can make a change in the world. And that could be you. It could be me. Yeah. I have a responsibility to raise my hand and say, this isn't okay in my town. This isn't okay in my home. This isn't okay. And I want it to change, and then have the resolve to continue to move forward step by step, line upon line, and make these changes. We can all do it.
Yeah.
I think that you're an amazing human, but you're no superhero.
That's true.
You're a dude.
Yeah.
You're a guy, and you're
unremarkable.
Yeah. Nicci, however,
Nicci's a superstar.
She's a superstar. Well, let's know that.
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is that resolve happens simply, and then needs to be adhered to. And if you have a calling, if you have an inkling that there's something that needs a change in the world, then you should do it. There's no reason that we as people cannot make that change and be the good in the world. Yeah. I love this story so much.
And that's where it really, I tell people that most great changes in this world have come from very unremarkable people. True change. And you think of Gandhi, you think of Mother Teresa, you think of the gentleman who started the Grameen Bank. These were very unremarkable people, but had a determination and just said, hey, I'm going to do it. Maybe they followed a little bit of Everett's. I can't think of his first name. Last name is Everett, but he had a saying that, I'm going to paraphrase it, but I can't do everything, but because I can't do everything, that won't stop me from doing the something that I can do.
There it is. Yeah.
And
it's easy to get overwhelmed.
Yeah, it is.
With the allness of it. And if you were to look at the scope of the journey, looking back over the years, now let's just say 5 years, 7 years that you've been working on this.
Yeah, 5. Yeah.
5. You would have been overwhelmed. This is an immovable object.
Yeah.
And even though you're an unstoppable force.
Yeah.
And so you started with the one thing, and the next thing, and the next best thing is what you did. And here we sit where we have 2 countries who have resolved to get this into the 2 or 3% range.
1.5 million families or individuals with families that are no longer are saying that this is who we are. And I'm going to go back now, maybe just a tiny bit. And between those 2 stories I told of removing the left eye, I'm going to tell you a story that happened in between there that was also very, very, very instrumental in making making these changes. And this was told to me by somebody else. And basically it's one thing to change people by force, like through the arrest. It's another thing to change it by law or political leaders. But until you change the minds of the people, number one, you might have some temporary change, but as soon as somebody else who is either more charismatic or something, they can turn those, they can turn the clock back. And so we knew we had to change the people. Didn't know how. And quite literally, I was invited to be a speaker at a anti-FGM rally. There's about 2,500 people there. I didn't know I was supposed to speak until I was arrived, and they said, "Oh yeah, by the way, you're the keynote." And so, but that morning I had been jotting some ideas down, and so I started giving this this speech, and it was literally in the middle of the speech, and the idea hit me that this tradition, this culture, was not their culture. It was not the Korean people's culture, nor was it even a Kenyan culture or even an African culture. I knew enough that this practice actually started in the Middle East, again, years before even Christ. and that just came to my mind. It wasn't part of my talk, and I remember I happened to connect eyes with one of the leaders, and I told them that, by the way, I want you to know that this culture that you're practicing, this tradition that you're practicing, isn't your culture. And I repeated that it's not Korean, it's not Kenyan, it's not even African, and that you're following a culture injuring these girls, and it's not yours. And I remember connecting eyes with this one gal who's very, very powerful, and I could just see her countenance change as she thought about that for the first time, and then seeing some other reactions. And then once that speech was over, and it was the end of the thing, you get to interact with a lot of people. It was incredible the amount of people that came up to me, the adults, and just in one way or another says, you're right. We've never thought of that. We've never. And so that was the beginning of now pushing out the narrative that as a community, as a Korean people, that this is not your tradition. You're simply following a tradition of another culture. And that was, again, one of those huge game changers that we experienced. And from that, we now knew that we could go to the schools, we can go to the people, to the families, to all these different groups and tell that story. And it wasn't a story of enforcement. It wasn't a story of you shouldn't be doing this because it hurts. It wasn't a story of
It's no longer a parable.
It's no longer a parable.
Yeah, it's the facts.
Yeah, it's the facts.
Yeah.
It's the facts. And somehow the idea came to me that we're not going to get rid of this tradition, but we're going to replace it. And it seems like that's a small issue. That became when they learned of the fact that it's not our tradition. Getting rid of a tradition is hard for a culture.
Sure.
But changing the tradition, much easier. And so the idea came to me that we're going, and we call it Temu 15, okay? Sweet 15 in Swahili.
The quinceañera.
The quinceañera, if you wonder where it came from. I spent 2 years down in Mexico.
I love a good quinceañera.
Yeah. And so we introduced this idea that we're not ending it, but that we're replacing it with this new tradition called Sweet 15. And the fact that we were replacing it, it became palatable for everybody.
So now it's a celebration of like the coming of age and and the food and it's a beautiful birthday, and what a great idea.
Instead of
it's cake and dancing and great music
and a beautiful dress and
a dress.
Yeah. And I could see that these girls would see that rather than like, hey, here goes my friends to this thing, to like, what? We're having this amazing celebration of life.
And they get all the same things. They get the party, they get the mattress, they get the spending money.
We just did it in last October. And the girls walked that route that they normally walk when they're cut and people pin money on them. They walk that route with their shirts on.
But with their dresses.
Anti-FGM. Yeah.
Wow.
And it was powerful, and spent hours and hours under these beautiful tents. We got to join them, and lively music. Oh, so much dancing.
I can't wait for the movie.
So much dancing and singing. And they got a gift, and there's cake, and we're celebrating Temu Kunani.
Temu Kunani.
Yeah.
How cool. How incredibly amazing. What a good,
Sweet 15.
What a beautiful.
Temu Kumi Natano. Temu Kumi 10, Natano plus 5.
Oh, got it.
Temu Kumi Natano.
All right.
So Sweet 15.
Swahili.
My Swahili is pretty rough.
Mine is as well.
I got to ask you, on the back of this book, and here's a book I want everybody to know a little bit about. I'm going to hold it up. The Value of a Daughter. I've actually read this already. I got this from you at your gala. Yeah, I got one and I read it. And so I've read the book, but on the back it says story by Nicci Renouard. And then it says Bwana Maji.
Wanamaji.
Tell me, what is that?
Wanamaji is again Swahili for Mr. Water. That came about. Yeah, that's been around for probably
16 years.
Yeah, almost from the very beginning. They just gave me that nickname.
They see him coming, they're like,
Wanamaji.
Yeah, what a cool name.
Yeah. So it's just the name that I was given at the very beginning of
one thing I want to stress is, John just has courage, but I also feel like he has protection.
Yeah.
It is not uncommon for people to die over FGM. He's been in situations where the driver of a taxi was pulled out of his car and brutally murdered because he wouldn't give money for the girls who are being paraded through the cut. He's been in many situations where his life was in his hands, not in his hands,
in
someone else's hands. And it's not for the faint of heart. So we're talking about making a difference, about leaving your mark, if you have a call or whatever, but you need to have some kind of protection. So we truly believe in a higher God. We believe in power and prayer, but sometimes just hire the police as well. Whatever you need to do to be safe. Because if John goes away, we know that Who Lives will continue. We know that our teams will continue and whatnot, but he's not done. He's got much more story to tell.
Well, and that's why he's protected. That's why you're lifted up, John, because there is a mission that needs to continue. There are things, and it's interesting that your time is known, right? And I believe that.
Yeah.
And everybody has this. This is not a this is not a personal power that just I have, or it's not related to my church. It's a power that all of us have, and it's listen to your gut, listen to that sixth sense, listen to that power that's beyond you. And I remember very distinctly, I was coming back to an apartment that I was living at and down in Mombasa, Kenya, and I just went to the shopping center. I was walking home, and I was taking a little bit of the shortcut as opposed to following the main roads. And I remember the thought coming to me, "Don't go down there." And I'm kind of arguing with myself. Well, it's going to save me 15 minutes. And
come on,
silly. It's like, come on, man, don't go down there. And I was, I'll use the word smart enough to listen. And I backed around and went along. I have no idea what was down there. Maybe it was nothing, but maybe it was something. So, and in the cases where, again, I've decided to go and do something, or like I mentioned a little bit earlier, to tell the police it's okay. It's those times where I really felt in my gut inspiration that I'm going to be okay. But it's not something that I take lightly. We don't take unnecessary chances. If I feel that there's an issue, I try not to put myself in danger. I definitely insist that my team does not put themselves in danger, and that they travel safely with other people and with armed police when necessary.
Oh, of course.
But
however,
yes,
listen,
and I've been blessed that way, and appreciate those those protections, because I've told one story, but I could probably tell.
He has a lot of stories, and he uses like the camera pen or the camera glasses, when he goes into some of these situations. So
wow,
there's a record of what happened and what's going on.
Beautiful. We're coming to the wrap up point, and there's two things that I want to really push home, because this is your third. Yes. And maybe final. Perhaps I'd like to have you back again, because I want to check in on the mission and where we're going. It feels to me like we're in a place of tremendous momentum.
Yeah.
And things are happening, and I want to share this story with all of our listeners, because we've got a tremendous support of good people in our community. Who Lives is an organization that I wholeheartedly support. There's a lot of nonprofits out there where you wonder, where does my money go? What is happening here? We've told the story now with the water. We've told the story with the opportunity, and now, of course, with some health. How can people support you and line up in a way that is going to make this mission, or the momentum that I just mentioned, continue?
Well, we have anti-FGM clubs in over 300 elementary schools. Those girls are amazing. We just saw them in March, just a couple weeks ago. The poems, the recitals they gave us, this is how it's going to stop forever. It's this rising generation. Because we're having such success, we want to go to 3,000 schools, and that requires money.
Yeah.
Let's just be honest. It does. They have a whole curriculum that they go through, the books that we give out, the value of a daughter. So wholives.org/donate that we need the resources. I mean, now that we've got a taste, we want to do more. And there's so many other countries that still practice this brutal tradition or cultural practice.
It's
we want to
scalability,
end.
right? I mean, we've
Right.
proven that we can do it, and we've done it successfully, and that's great for that 1.5 million people. But there's 34 other countries that have large populations that practice this, and we would, now that we have the trajectory, now that we know how to do it, what to do, it's going to be a lot easier. But it's funding. I mean, in order to scale, you
And
have
it's
to
so
have that
cool
funding.
because, like, I talked about 2 girls, Damaris and Yulita, because Yulita went to the police station and we got involved. Now that police station has electricity, and now
Yeah.
they have a Child Protective Services department. So it's such an incredible thing. We just need to be aware of it, and then we can step in and help. It just makes it better.
Makes it better. I just want to say, I will be bold in asking for your donations to support this organization. This is something that if you have abundance in your life and you would like more abundance, I believe that donating to an organization that has a mission that you can get behind is necessary. It's not good enough for us to sit around and think someone should do something about that. You are the person that needs to do something about that. And John and Nicci and Jimmy and all of these girls and police officers and all the people that are in the world that are making this happen can't do it without the resource of money. Simply put, it takes your money. And so if you're in a place of abundance, you go to that wholives.com/.org/, and we'll put this link in our
You'll see it right on wholives.org.
donate.
Yeah.
And do your part, because this is necessary. This is a mission that needs to continue forward. And I know, John, you have something else on your mind. I can see that it's bubbling up. We've been doing this, but I really want to put an exclamation point on that. This is a straight ask for an opportunity to support.
Yeah, and we take very, very seriously that we believe that this is your purpose, and that's our tagline is who live with purpose. The live with purpose isn't necessarily for the people that we're helping. The live with purpose are all the people that are supporting it. They are literally part of this family. They are solving this issue. That's the live with purpose that we're talking with. And if you're looking for that purpose and you're looking for
alignment,
impact per dollar,
yes.
and I know that there's been NGOs have been on the news a lot. We don't take any government funds. Everything is grassroots that we do, and we do more with less. There's basically 3 employees that are doing all this work, not only with the FGM, but with the water and with the business opportunities, where other organizations might have 200 to 300 people to do that same work, because we're looking to solve it. And plus we bring the people in the local industries in those countries to do the heavy lifting. It's what enables us to have the impact we have for each dollar donated. But
thanks for inviting us.
Yeah.
It's been such a pleasure.
Thank you for taking time 3 times to four times to sit with us and explain the story. I think that the medium that we have here in illustrating the different missions of the nonprofit is important, and so I'm grateful for your time and explaining it.
I want to give just one more shout out to the people. And about 3 times a year, we're not a travel company, but 3 times a year we do take groups over, and so they can see what we're doing. And I just got back from our latest trip just a week ago, I guess a week ago yesterday. And we visited one of those schools in East Korea, all girls school.
Wow.
And they've never met us. I've never met them. This is in the heart of where the FGM is most radical. And here's a school of 500 plus girls, 100% of which have sworn off FGM. The teachers have sworn off FGM. And they gave the most powerful speeches about getting rid of this this culture, and again, that brought me to tears to see that school, who again, it wasn't set up ahead of time. They were going through the after school program that Nicci had talked about, that we've introduced over 300 schools. But to see that change was, I don't get emotional about a lot of things, because again, there's a lot of tough things out there. This one hit me where, wow, this is just one out of 300 schools, and to have every girl now, and every boy for that matter, because we don't talk a lot about the boys, but they're a big part of what we do as well. To make them feel included, to make them the protectors, to make them also understand that the tradition was they would not marry somebody who was uncut. Well, we turned that tradition around to where now they'll marry who they love, whether they're cut or not. But we have made that acceptable in those areas. But again, to go to the school just a week ago and to see them on their own without any prodding on our side, to see their reaction, their love. And I asked the question, could you imagine this 12 months ago? And the teachers were in a meeting with all the teachers. They said, no, you could not even talk about this topic a year ago.
Wow.
And in 1 year, 100% turnaround. So it's working, but we need more people, and we need to introduce this into other countries and
more resources.
Let's go.
Let's do it.
Imagine a day in the future where they looked back at this time and they were like, can you imagine that was even a thing?
Yeah.
Imagine that's the future that you, 2, 3, 5, 10, hundreds are now putting together. Thank you.
Yeah. No.
Yeah, thank you.
The one thing that we promised, sorry.
Oh gosh.
But the one thing that we promised as a whole, that when this is over, we're going to build them a small museum, and we're going to put all the cutting tools and the pictures of everything that happened, and make it a little bit of a
memorial.
Memorial where travelers and visitors can come by and pay a couple dollars and see what it used to be like. And it's amazing that we're probably less than 6 months away from building that memorial with confidence that it's over. And so that was again one of those little things that we put out there that people really got behind. They want that memorial. They're like, don't forget about our memorial, John. And so, yeah, it'll be a great day when that memorial is built, and all those tools of the past are shown who they were, but not who they are.
Amen. All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in.
You know the drill. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and we'll catch you on the next one.